Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Welcome. My name is Carolyn Woodard, and I am the Director of Outreach for Community IT. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our series of discussions on high-tech and cutting-edge nonprofit technology. Today, our 3 senior experts will be discussing cyber, crypto, and blockchain. If you missed part 1 on virtual reality, you can find it if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll let our experts introduce themselves and get right into the discussion.
So my name is Johan Hammerstrom. I'm the CEO at Community IT. So I'm happy to be here today with Steve. Steve,
Sure.
You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Steve Longenecker. I'm the Director of IT Consulting at Community IT.
My name is Nura Aboki. I'm an IT business manager and a senior consultant at Community IT.
Well, I'm curious to hear about what Nura's been looking at lately in terms of new technology and specifically, what some of the clients that he's been working with are looking at. Like, what are some of the new things that a lot of nonprofits are starting to use that we maybe haven't seen before? So I'm curious to hear more about that.
One of the trends we're seeing is certainly the hybrid work environment. What is that? That is here to stay. What is it going to look like 2 years from now or next year? Is it going to be more remote access, more adoption of social media tools, faster connections, virtual assistants? So those are the kind of things I basically researched on, and I have a few points that I would want to share in this conversation.
So as a senior consultant, you work with many of our largest clients. And as you mentioned, helping them with roadmap development and planning for the future. And I'm curious, what are you seeing now? Are there any new technologies or technology solutions that you've seen in the last year or two in the work that you do that are maybe new or that you were kind of surprised to see?
Well, in the past 2 years, we've been hit hard by the pandemic. We can't escape that fact. Yeah. And that has really created the need for cloud adoption. Several nonprofit organizations have really invested in making sure that they have business continuity. And those investments are typically with software as a service solution providers. Primarily, we've seen this across, let's say, Microsoft products, Google products. Those are big players that we are seeing clients moving from on-premises solutions that they would have been using back when we were mostly in the office to switching to using cloud-based solution or software as a service. In addition to that, departments across nonprofit organizations, especially departments that deal with people and culture, departments that deal with finance, are also investing in cloud-based software as a service solutions. They are integrating their business processes with those solutions. Now, 2 years after the pandemic or so, we are seeing clients thinking about going back into the office. And that has also begged the question, what would the office look like, where you have people transitioning from being fully remote to having a sort of hybrid work environment. And clients some clients that are thinking of that hybrid environment have been making investments in ensuring there is fast connectivity in the office, because they still want their employees to have that hybrid experience where they're able to access services remotely, as well as when they're in the office, that fast connectivity to access cloud services is there for them. So we are seeing investments in increasing the bandwidth speeds. And that is also interesting because bandwidth used to be expensive. Now it's becoming cheaper and cheaper, more accessible. So even smaller nonprofits have more options in selecting their internet service provider that will give them the most reliable, fast connections. Just to touch on a little bit on specifics, a hybrid work environment investment would be something like, hey, we have a lease in the office. For instance, a client would say, well, we're going to have a lease on the office, but the office furniture is not fully utilized, or office space is not fully utilized. So there's that consideration of some clients saying, hey, let's bring in some subtenants, or maybe we should have a way of having applications that will allow us for hoteling some of the desks in the office or office space. So no single employee owns the space, but rather it's a shared workspace. And that, I think there's a heavy utility in that kind of thinking and investment. So there are SaaS applications or software as a service applications out there tailored to providing efficient ways of using your office space. So that's one specific example that I could share.
Yeah, I've seen something similar where I think at the start of the pandemic, we went from working at an office to working at home. And then as the pandemic has started to recede, it seems to me like organizations, especially larger organizations, aren't going back to working from the office. They're instead moving into this mode of working from anywhere, where one day you might be working at home, the next day you might go into the office, but you might work at a desk that you reserve through a reservation system like the kind you're talking about. And then 2 days later, you might travel to another city to visit, another customer or client that you have in that city. And then the next day you come back and you work from home. And so the work environment, especially the computing work environment, has to work from a variety of different locations, and from a variety of different, and in a variety of different environments. And so that's something that requires not just a reliable laptop. It's not just about having the laptop. It's like you're saying, how do you connect to the internet from all of these different locations? And how do you reserve locations to work from? And how do you work productively from those locations, while also like connecting with people and other people in the organization and in other organizations who are also working from a wide range of different locations. So it's introduced, I think, more complexity in some ways into the work environment. And, IT, as we know, one of the great strengths of IT is its ability to assist with managing complexity. And so having a solution that enables an organization to manage desk reservations at their office space is going to be effective. Those sorts of solutions are going to be important.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Johan, for really expanding on that. And it presents complexity and concerns in terms of security. And I think investments in security has increased as well, because the threat landscape is now broader and wider. We talked about people working from anywhere. So how do you ensure that their access to the network services are secure and not compromised? How do we? In my conversation with leaders, senior leaders at non-profit organizations, they're asking questions about security, and one element to it is, how do we ensure our employees are educated enough? They are sort of aware of the threat landscape and the risk that is out there. And in particular, we are seeing companies or clients sign up for security awareness training programs. And even if they have not been thinking about it, or they feel like, well, I'm no threat. My organization is just a volunteer we provide food to poor people. That kind of mindset and thinking is still, the organization can be at risk because you may have personally identifiable information that they have on their database that can be hacked, or theft of identity, or they could be used as proxy. So we've seen increased attacks in phishing attacks, spam phishing attacks, fraudulent emails being sent, impersonation of employees. And for that reason, companies are investing in security awareness program. They feel the first line of defense is the employee. If the employee is able to detect social engineering because they are probably sitting somewhere on a beach working from, working remotely, they understand, well trained, and are aware of threats that may come their way. So that is another angle to the complexity that it adds: more support, more complexity, but then indeed security is also an area where CEOs and executive directors, high level staff are thinking about. Would you agree that, Johan, that you're also seeing that up and up increased investment in cybersecurity?
I totally agree. I think there's an increased and emerging awareness when it comes to cybersecurity. And I think what's most interesting is that that you have to up your cybersecurity game. It's not enough to have MFA anymore. Multi-factor authentication, which is something that a lot of organizations adopted over the course of the pandemic. I mean, I think there was a growing awareness that if my staff can log into their email from home or from anywhere, then a hacker, a threat actor, could log into our email from anywhere. And so there was an increased awareness that having multi-factor authentication was an important security protection to add. Now what we're seeing is that not all multi-factor authentication methods are created equal, and not all MFA approaches to MFA are equally secure. And this became really clear with the Uber hack, where they were able to basically access Uber's credential database, the database that had all of their security credentials. Even though it was protected through MFA, the hackers found a way to bypass that MFA because of how the MFA was implemented. So we're now, and it's cat and mouse, every time you have a new protection, people find ways to bypass it, and then you need to make the protection stronger. So the code-based MFA where it's sending a code to your phone, has been found to be fairly weak, especially when it comes to a determined threat actor who wants to hack into your system. And more advanced implementations of MFA are being developed and deployed, and that's something that I think is going to be important for organizations to look at and to start implementing over the next few years.
Excellent point. Thank you, Johan.
I also think another area of security that's important is encryption. And I know we've started to use both. I mean, disk level encryption is something that organizations have been doing for a while. I think it's something that also has become a lot more common in the last few years. And then file level encryption is something that has started to be, we've definitely started to use it more here at Community IT. I'm just curious if you've seen that in any of the organizations that you work with, or if you've seen any use cases where file level encryption would be beneficial.
Yeah, good question again, Johan. I certainly have seen encryption in some of our clients, and some of them really collect a lot of information about their donors, collect information about their members, and that information can be personally identifiable information, social security perhaps, or credit card information, address, something you can build a profile and that is at risk, or sensitive information that could be at risk when it falls in the wrong hands. So clients have asked of a variety of ways to secure that data, whether it's through encryption at rest of the files that are stored on either a cloud files storage solution, like a variety of them are out there, quite frankly, that typically would have the encryption at rest, or even they are concerned that if they are sharing information or sharing links, are these links secure? So they are concerned about the files encryption in transit. Is it really happening, and how can they be sure that no man-of-the-middle attack or spoofing attack or some sort of a cyber attack can be launched to capture that data in transit? So cloud providers are stepping in to ensure that there is encryption in transit as well. Now, the disk encryption that you had mentioned, which we're seeing device encryption, is a no-brainer. Organizations that do have users using mobile devices like laptops, for instance, they should really consider getting that. It's available within the operating system and can be easily implemented and deployed. So we advise our clients to prioritize, if they haven't, disk or device encryption for all the laptops that they may have. And even for stationary devices, if it's a stationary device that is likely going to have some sensitive information, disk encryption is important. And device encryption can be enabled as long as you have the right partner that has the right skill set to get that rolled out. More as clients use more of the cloud, then the cloud providers need to provide some evidence of encryption, and they typically have, whether it's 256-bit AES encryption or it's 128, they do have some level of encryption. Some organizations that do have compliance requirements, there may be some minimum requirements to meet that compliance, and they need to evaluate the vendor that is providing that storage capability for their files in the cloud to ensure that their data is secure. There are some high security nonprofit organizations that are really security conscious, and they are worried that their data can be shared with some of the third-party cloud providers. So they also need to closely evaluate to see how they can bring in their own encryption keys, that they are the only ones that have the private keys to decrypt any data. And even the provider doesn't know what's there. It's encrypted. All they know is there are files on there stored by X client, but they can't really decrypt and read any of their data. So there are levels, but that evaluation needs to be done typically with an IT partner that actually has the experience to provide that guidance.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, I wonder if any of your clients have asked you about blockchain or cryptocurrency. Is that something that you ever get asked about?
Well, as I'm looking at the dates on my computer, we recently experienced some crypto exchange that actually went into trouble. And so that excitement is there. The questions I typically get about crypto is it possible for us to have a secure, clean way to accept donations? Mm-hmm. So that is the fundamental question. How are we going to raise funds? Is crypto an option for us? And it's under consideration, I would say. I'm not aware of any of my clients that is accepting crypto as a method of providing donations. But the confidence level that people had, and it's still there. It's just that recently the news hasn't been good for the crypto community. And so there's growing concern that who is a legitimate regulated, sort of regulated crypto exchange provider where we accept donations in crypto currencies, and we can convert it into fiat currencies at the other end and use it to fund our programs easily. That's to the extent where I've seen those conversations happen. But I know investments are being made by the tech community to provide solutions around blockchain of transactions, so they can easily be audited and know your customer, knowing where the source of the fund is coming from, who it's exchanged with, and how the transaction is done. Blockchain technology has so much potential in providing that transparency.
Yeah, I agree. I think blockchain is very interesting. I don't know nearly enough about it to really weigh in on its technical merits. I do think that, like, for example, this, like, going back to the DocuSign example, where we sign documents with this weird, like, sort of grainy
click. Yeah. Well, it's the click that counts, but
it's the click, right? Exactly. It's the click that counts, and the click is verified by sort of this poor facsimile of a written signature.
Right.
You know.
Right.
If the blockchain technology can create like some sort of like universal verification method where a contract, like contracts seem like an area where that seem ripe for innovation. You know, if contract storage could be like centralized and done in a secure way, and there's a ledger that, you know, tracks all of the contracts that are getting signed in the world or something like that. Like, that seems like an efficiency gain over what we have with DocuSign right now, which is, you know, like graphic facsimiles of, it's like the fax machine in some ways,
right.
like the DocuSign system. So I would assume that DocuSign is looking closely at blockchain and figuring out how can we innovate to the next level with all of this. So I think it's important to separate blockchain, the technology, from like cryptocurrency, the I don't know, what's
financial boondoggle.
Well, I think there's like some you know, there's people who are true believers when it comes to what crypto is supposed to be able to do. Mm-hmm. In terms of like global currency systems,
right? Freeing us from the nation state monopoly on monetary systems right now. Yeah, no, I get that, and it's an interesting idea.
Well, I think it's really naive, and I think, you know, like human history and human behavior being what it is, like, lo and behold, like a lot of cryptocurrencies are actually fraudulent and they're failing and they're crashing, like every other new financial instrument that's ever been invented in the history of financial instruments. So I think it's easy to look at all that and say, well, it's a bunch of hype and it doesn't really, you know, it's just fraudulent. But I think behind the way in which this blockchain technology is being used, there could be a legitimate technology that, you know, in the hands of companies, it's going to be tech companies, could end up being put to, you know, a use that a lot of organizations find helpful.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 of this discussion of high tech and nonprofits. You can find parts 1 and 3 if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, or on YouTube, or on our website. Get in touch with us on our website to suggest future topics you'd like us to talk about.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.